Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik with Flying and Eating. Today, let's go somewhere and do something, and make sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
Hey everyone, it's Adam here. On today's adventure, I'm heading out to Washington, D.C., represented here by the word First Lady, which is not really about Washington. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So we're going out there. Look who else is going. The partner in crime. What are we doing? Where are we going? What are we doing this for?
Well, I have to meet friends there, but I think we're gonna check DC out as well.
Yeah, that's. I promised you guys this. If you guys, astute viewers, will know that early on in the channel's history, we took like 2 little trips to DC, and I was like, we'll come back. Now is that time. We're also going to meet up with a familiar, Sunshine, who you've never actually met. To you guys, it's like 2 episodes ago the last time you saw him. To me, it's like months. That's magic, movie magic, right? Time to go through security. Unfortunately, this is where we part ways. You're going to have to go use that lane. I'm sorry. I'm going to go use the clear lane. I am very fortunate, but I get to carry some of your stuff. Okay, so we are here in DC, and I just wanted to point something out. This exact spot right here, this is where I once met the CEO of United. His name's Oscar, and he was just standing there, and I recognized him because I fly that much, and I got him to sign my ticket. Yes, this is a real thing. This actually happened. United doesn't have a huge presence over here. They pretty much just have this wing down there. There's a club there that I've never been to. Anyway, so one pro tip, if you ever come out to the nation's capital in DC, there are 2 airports, both of which are technically in Virginia, just because DC itself is very, very small. It's the size of a postage stamp, approximately. And the thing to know is that this is DCA. This is Ronald Reagan International is what it's called. This is the good airport to go to if you are actually staying in DC. However, the other hub, the other airport is IAD Dulles, named after Allen Dulles, and it's the big one. It's the one that's mostly good for transfers. So if you think of this in like Japanese perspective, this is your Haneda versus that one being the Narita. New York perspective, this is the LaGuardia. The other one is the Newark. It's kind of like that. Hey, look who it is.
How's it going?
Yeah, Sunshine's back. So we attempted to go over to the Pentagon and get you guys some like cool photos and stuff. But unfortunately, the park is not currently open to what you would call normal people, so we couldn't do that. Anyway, we're now going to head on out to Maryland to a place called Waldorf, that area? Yeah, so tomorrow is going to be our big DC adventure, though. You guys will see some stuff. Oh, yeah, and this one's still here. So we are at the Bangkok Golden Thai restaurant, and some decisions have been made. I'm going with the tropical fried rice, and I'm doing this because you got to focus on the Our Signature section. Why would you do anything else? Food has arrived. I've got my tropical rice. What'd you get again?
I don't recall the name. Wait, but I know that it's cellophane noodles with a bunch of seafood and mushrooms and good stuff.
Noodles and shrimp and stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
It's the scampi lover, right?
Yes, the scampi lover. That's right.
Scampi lover. I mean, this is not the scampi lover. What is this?
This is the Thai violet, so it has eggplant and just goodness, basil, chicken.
I thought it was pretty good. I liked my not Hawaiian, pineapple rice, fried rice. It's tropical fried rice. Apologies. I didn't mean to say that all tropical things are Hawaiian. I apologize. This looks like... I don't. See, the light coming in on my face looks like I have a bunch of bald spots, but I don't. It's fine. See? Look at that. Okay. Anyway, what'd you think of yours?
Yeah, that was great. I love the eggplant. I question your choice with the pineapple, but mine was good.
It's not a pizza. It was good. It's a nice, sweet mix. Actually, if it had one flaw, the shrimp. The shrimp was a little bland, which is surprising for shrimp. And they kept the tails on. I'm not eating plastic. I don't want that. Anyway, thoughts?
I really like my food. It also had the tails, but one thing you learn when you live in Hawaii is to eat the tails.
That's right.
Not complain.
And extra crunch.
Yes.
No, it's not food.
It's extra protein.
It's plastic.
Eat your creatine.
Hey guys, day 2 here out in the Washington, D.C. area, specifically Maryland. So today, Sunshine's going to come back and get me. Girlfriend's off doing her thing with her friends, and we're going to go check out some sites and see what else we can find for you. So we're stopping here at Silver Diner, much more than a diner, so it claims. Basically, it looks like an East Coast style, like this New Jersey-looking 1950s circa diner. Shout out to the evil Rob Thanos. I know you love these places. Honestly, I don't think we're expecting a whole lot, but I need coffee and sustenance, so here we go.
All right, so we both got the same thing, basically. What'd you get specifically?
I got corned beef hash, I got the biscuit and green peppers, which I know you don't like.
I do not. But you also got scrambled eggs.
Ah, yeah, that is the other difference.
Mine was slightly different. I also got the corned beef hash. I went without the green peppers because I don't know why you would want that. It's not as bad as pickles, but they're like pickle adjacent. And then I went sunny side up eggs. But and toast instead of the biscuit. We're not in the South, man. We're not in the South.
I'll try it at least once.
Fine, go ahead and try it.
So we just came out of there. What'd you think of your food?
It was all right. I shouldn't have gotten the biscuits. We're not in the South.
That's what I said. That's why I got the bread, and then I can make little sandwiches. It all worked out fine, except for my hair. My hair didn't work out too fine. But no, the place is fine. It's an East Coast diner in the wrong state. That's the best way you can put it. It was fine. It was fine. All right, so a little tourist moment number one. Where are we at?
Yeah, we're here at the National Space Museum, the annex up in, it's right next to Dulles, probably IAD, right by the side here.
The big airport. I told you, the one that's better for transfers, not the one if you're actually staying in D.C. But yeah, museum time. There's going to be some stuff inside that will be a nice little throwback to some very recent videos. You'll see. So we are inside. There is a little bit of a security section over there. They wanted to make sure the Sega Pluto wasn't anything bizarre, which of course it's totally fine. So I've got that on me. Yeah, I don't think I've ever been in here, but it's a lot of Boeing aviation hangar, lots of planes and stuff like that. So we're now in your favorite section, which is all about space and celestial bodies, and nothing says Pluto on it yet, but one thing it does say cool things is this. This is the Discovery, the actual space shuttle Discovery is parked here. This thing's been in space many, many times. It's a lot bigger than I anticipated. This is really cool, dude. Just thought I'd give you guys a shot of that booty. Oh yeah. So there is a lot of World War II era stuff here, both Allied and Axis. You've got a lot of Nazi stuff, a lot of Japanese stuff. I don't know the details on it, obviously it's explained here. I do remember seeing this thing. This was like a late prototype that the Germans were working on towards the end of the war. I think there's only a couple of these in the world. You can see a lot more military aircraft of varying, it's the United States, of course. I forget what this thing is.
SR-71.
The SR-71. If you ever saw that horrible Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, this thing turned into Jetfire, and it was a national embarrassment. Anyway, so yeah, we got a bunch of Vietnam era stuff, 1960s, mostly American, I would assume. There might be some Soviet stuff here. I'm not. Oh yeah, so that's the Soviet stuff. But yeah, there's gonna be a nice mixed bag of that kind of thing around here. Up there, they actually have one of those Predator Reaper drones. This thing is much bigger than you would think in pictures. Granted, that applies to everything here, but still, boom. So the thing about this place is really cool is you can see there's just obviously tons of aircraft everywhere. As a guy who likes to fly a lot, awesome. But this place is ridiculously big, and there's way too many aircraft. It would take hours to go through all of this. So I'll show you some highlights, of course. One of the coolest things, though, and I didn't know this till you pointed it out, entry costs how much?
Oh, it's $15 for parking, and it's free to get in.
So right here we have an actual F-14 Tomcat. If you are, of course, a fan of, what is it? Maverick. Why am I spacing on the name? Top Gun. Top Gun. Yes, stupid me. You know where my mind went to on this particular aircraft was not Top Gun and Tom Cruise and all that. It actually went to Starscream and G1 Transformers. Those characters were all based off this. And of course, there's the terrible Tomcat fighting or just like game on the Sega CD. It says something about me. I'm not sure it's a good thing that Top Gun is not what came to mind first. We've got shots of various helicopters and sea and rescue type planes. Those are older ones like World War II and stuff, but you got Vietnam era helicopters. A lot of Vietnam era stuff here, which makes sense. I just like there's a better shot of the Reaper drone up there. It's weird, like you can tell they're original, but they're also like clearly like repainted, and like the paint almost looks fake. I don't know how else to describe it. There's like an uncanny valley thing happening with the paint, and I don't know if that's just because it's a modern tactic or something. I don't know.
Too new.
Yeah, that's probably what it is. Something's messing with me. So over here you have a lot of World War II stuff. This is a lot of Axis stuff, so there's a lot of German things. And on this side you have a lot of Japanese stuff. This one actually is the Sakura. This one I actually remember. I remember watching a documentary about this. The Japanese developed this right towards the end of the war. They only made a handful of these ever. And the idea was that you would connect it to, I'm not going to say it was this aircraft necessarily, but let's just pretend for argument's sake that it was. You connect it to the bottom of this would fly, and then this would detach mid-flight with a pilot, and it was essentially a glider that was entirely intended for kamikaze purposes. That's cool to see. There's only a couple of those were ever made. But yeah, you got a lot of different recovered Japanese and German aircraft from the end of the war, which, as terrible as it all was, I gotta admit, it's cool that they at least preserved it. The U.S. is very good at that type of thing. It's like, don't pretend history didn't happen. They'll like show you the history firsthand. So we're now in the commercial aircraft section. Right here we have like a Lufthansa aircraft, which was a German airline, still is around. And I'm not sure what this is offhand, but then we have Boeing 707 over here. This is cool though, seeing the Concorde. That's the first supersonic jet. Obviously, that one's by Air France. They don't do that anymore. Although they might be launching new supersonic jets soon. Like a company called Boom is working on it. That'll be cool if that ever really comes into materialization. Pan Am, I think? The Clipper. Okay, this is a weird one. This plane looks like it came out of Thomas the Tank Engine or something. This looks like something you'd see in like Wolfenstein or something. This doesn't seem like a real aircraft, but it's here. So this is what I wanted to show you guys. This was my #1 goal. This is the Enola Gay. Now, this is the super fortress the United States used at the end of the Second World War to take off from Tinian to drop the atomic bomb on Hiroshima. It was not actually the plane used in the second bombing out of Nagasaki. The reason this is surreal to me, in addition to just the history of it, I just took you guys to Tinian. We went to the actual bomb pits, if you guys remember that. At one time, this plane, presumably right over there, was overloaded right on top of those bomb pits. Like, I think that's the bomb bay door right there. You have to, this is kind of hard to visualize. I'll try to cut a little between the two. But that was overlaid right over those bomb pits. And now I've effectively been to both of those locations in just the past couple of months. It's kind of surreal, dude.
Very odd tangent on the Pluto's journey.
Yeah, oh, well, the Sega, yeah, my journey too. But yes, the Sega Pluto got to do all this too. It's just living history, guys. Good morning. It's day 3, I think, now, technically, on this whole thing. So today's the day we're actually going to DC proper. We're going to go do all the stereotype stuff, such as
Like Washington Monument, Lincoln Monument, the Jefferson Monument. No one cares about that one.
Yeah, The Simpsons told us that. But yeah, we'll see what else comes of it. And we'll maybe show you some surprises, depending on what else we can find. Well, I guess this is a thing now. Shout out to Atlanta Dave. If you want to get drunk, go for it. So this is my portable charger. It's got a solar panel on it. And as you can see, it's not getting any energy right now. It recharges. And Sunshine is here with me, so I'm just going to steal his juice. Yeah, how do you feel about that?
I don't know. I kind of want it back.
Well, you can't have it. It's going to power my phone. So we just got off the train. We were currently in the Metro, which is actually a very nice little train system. Just to explain it, it's very similar to the Japanese ones. You can buy like a little card. Like in Japan, you get the Suica Passmo card. Here you can get cards out of these machines over here. One-time use if you want, but you can also use the reload card. And then when you get it, you charge it with money, once again like Japan. Although here you can use credit cards, which is really nice. And then you can tap it on the thing and go in there, and then you tap it again on the way out. Do not throw out your card. It just deducts money. Reload it as need be. Washington Monument, best known for its cameo in Spider-Man Homecoming, of course. And Superman 2. Superman 2 when it fell over. That's what everybody knows this for. But for real, this is, of course, the obelisk George Washington Monument. And I don't think I've ever actually been up in it, and I don't really want to, but it is definitely one of the most standout things in DC, because you can kind of see it from anywhere. So we're at the American History Museum by the Smithsonian. One of the cool things about this is right outside of it, they have flags from every part of the U.S. And when I say every part, not just the states. People forget, it's the 50 states, but there's 6 additional areas. One right here, that's the Washington, D.C. flag, where we, of course, are, which is an area. But then they actually gave shout out to the territories. We got Guam over there. On this part of the museum, this end, obviously, you still see the Washington Monument. Of course, we have the CNMI flag down Saipan, Tinian, all that. Puerto Rico, of course, U.S. Virgin Islands, and then, of course, you start getting into the actual states, like Alaska, and so on and so forth. I made a mistake down there, though. They do have the American Samoa flag, the only part of the United States I have never been to. I think they're mostly alphabetical, like Alabama, Arizona, Arkansas, although Alaska's on the other side for some reason. They seem to wrap around. But the reason I bring this up is because the territories, as well as D.C., they put 3 of them right here in front, and the other 3 over there in front. And it feels like that's the most representation they get.
And I'm not trying to make a statement on that. It's just an observation. We're now inside the museum, and specifically we're up at like the American Wars Memorial type of thing. So they have all sorts of information on, I'm not going to say every war, but here's the Civil War section at least. And yeah, we'll see what else we can find for you. So over here at the beginning, you have French and Indian War stuff, which was a precursor to the Revolutionary War that nobody seems to remember, but thankfully they have something for it. And eventually we have to assume that that leads into the Revolutionary War. You have the War of Independence. And then inevitably you're going to get other incursions. War of 1812. I got to admit, seeing like original artifacts from something that old, that's pretty cool that that's actually still there. This is an actual suit worn by President George Washington, depicted for that painting. That's really cool. I give them credit for calling it what it is, wars of expansion, as we went into the Mexican-American War and obviously the War of 1812, and I mean, to be frank, everything we did to the natives, I mean, that's what this is. And here we have the war that basically got us all the territories and almost complete control of North America, the Spanish-American War, which was one of the last pushes by the United States to kick Europeans out of the continent. But yeah, it talks about the history of some of the territories, former territories. Cuba was actually a former territory at one point. Just kind of fascinating. I don't want to spoil this for everybody. Like, you know, come here, have your own adventure. Just here's a teaser of the kind of things you can see. Okay, this is actually really cool. These are the original chairs and the original table from the end of the Civil War. The surrender at Appomattox, where Robert E. Lee and Ulysses S. Grant sat down and signed the paperwork ending the war. That's surreal, dude. So here they have like a little section about America's involvement in World War I. For the U.S., World War I wasn't actually all that significant. The war started in 1914, and it ended in November of 1918, but we weren't actually technically involved until April 6, 1917. But here's something that I don't teach you much in history class. There's this guy, and you know this because I talked about it ad nauseum. This guy, John J. Pershing, one of the greatest Americans to ever live. This dude had, I'm not going to give you the whole story, but look that dude up. He basically had this whole strategy for how the U.S. would fight. So even though we technically entered in 1917, we weren't really fighting until spring/summer of 1918. And then only a couple months after, he basically had this strategy of build up troops, build up troops, build up troops. Don't allow them to fight. Don't allow them to fight. Just build them up. Then eventually he just basically went, okay, go. And then all of a sudden, Germany surrenders. Not really surprising, but of course the World War II section is far bigger here. So I mentioned earlier that one of our goals with the Spanish-American War was to kind of kick out the Europeans. You guys, you're familiar with the Lend-Lease Act. Remember we've talked about this. If you guys ever went to school, you've heard of it. I'm sure it's mentioned in here, where we basically gave the British a bunch of equipment and stuff for almost nothing. The part history doesn't talk about all that much is at the time, the British still had a whole bunch of military bases in the not in the United States, but in North America and Central America. And our condition for the Lend-Lease Act was all that stuff, that's got to go. Your military bases are out. And with that, the United States gained full control almost of North America. And it still kind of maintains that policy of like, keep the Europeans out, keep foreign powers out. We're going to control the oceans. And that all was achieved in 1945. So I want to talk a bit about this. Right behind me here, you have actual World War II German era stuff. So it's a German gun, it's a Nazi flag, etc. And the reason I bring this up is people will probably question. I had actually posted on Twitter that I was over at the Enola Gay, and people thought I was glorifying the war just by taking a photo of it. And I want to make something very clear. Having stuff like that is not to glorify anything. It's to remind you of what happened so that you avoid it in the future. And that is exactly why this exists. A monument and a plaque of remembrance to what happened on August 6, 1945. The United States is not proud of that decision, but it did happen. And once again, it's not to glorify it by showing it. It's to let you know it happened because you can learn from that. So then we get into the Cold War era, which of course was the political and social struggle between the United States and the former Soviet Union. Spoilers, we won. But that was an era of espionage, and it's really kind of depressing that at times it feels like it's returning. But of all the consequences that came from that, you had things like North and South Korea, you had the rise of Japan coming from that, as well as globalization, American security order, its nuclear fallout scares. a chaotic era that Cuban Missile Crisis, like you can go on and talk about this forever. I'm not going to just sit here and teach you guys a bunch of history that I'm sure you know, but it is truly fascinating to look back at that era and see like how much of the world was defined by it and still is. So now we get into the Vietnam section, a war that everybody questions why we did. Not one I would ever defend for obvious reasons, but you know, I watched a thing lately and a guy was explaining, he's like, the Vietnam War wasn't about rubber or, you know, containing communism exactly. It was mostly about America's commitment to actually protecting its allies. After things like the Cuban Missile Crisis, where we were starting to make trade deals with the Soviets, it kind of looked like we were willing to trade away allies if the pressure was high. And the Europeans in particular didn't think we were really going to come to their aid if anything happened. Vietnam was a miscalculation where the United States thought, okay, let's make a case that we would go stop a communist country if it ever got too extreme. Vietnam's far away. It's not in our backyard like Cuba. It's not a direct intervention with the Soviet Union. We can do this, and we grossly underestimated them. And that was the lesson to learn, which was never underestimate your opponent and don't start pointless political wars. So here you get to the end of the Cold War with the fall of the Berlin Wall, the Soviet Union ultimately collapsing shortly thereafter. And frankly, it all kind of getting a lot better until you get to the 90s. Didn't last too long. And you've got Desert Storm, which was an overwhelming success, militarily speaking. And then, of course, a few years later, you have 9/11 attacks, which you have actual World Trade Center steel right there, as well as the attack on the Pentagon, which is not far from here, obviously. And it's just, eventually that led to the Iraq War, and yeah, Afghanistan, obviously. Look, the hunt for bin Laden. Then it shows, like, you know, some of the more modern tech that goes with stuff like that. But yeah, as it says, reflecting on war, just reflect on this. This is one of the more fascinating things. They've got bits and pieces of wreckage that came out of the Pentagon, but also one of the airphones, if you guys are old enough to remember those, that used to be in planes. Those were basically the way in which Flight 93 had communication with the passengers that allowed them to take the plane down to at least prevent an attack, which is still believed to have either been for the U.S. Capitol building or possibly the White House. But to this day, it's not confirmed to my knowledge. That was pretty cool. But the one war I didn't notice anything for, Grenada. So we're going to go into the American presidency, a glorious burden. So here they have a little timeline of every president, all 46 of them. Though technically there's only been 45. Grover Cleveland is over there twice, as both 22nd and 24th, non-consecutive terms. And by the time you're seeing this, it's very probable that number 39, Jimmy Carter, is no longer with us. At the time I record this, he is still around, but that may not be the case for much longer. He is the only president alive at the time I record this again who served before I was born. I was born in '86. I was born in the Reagan era. And all these two have died in my lifetime, and Clinton onward are still alive in my lifetime. But Carter, the only one alive who served before me. In my lifetime, though, Ford and Nixon also died. This section's cool. It's just a bunch of random, like, knickknacks and stuff that were owned by various presidents, like, all the way back to Washington. Pretty cool. They have a section on historical impeachments. There's only been technically 4. Andrew Johnson was the first, but he was never removed from office. He was successfully impeached, but that's it. Richard Nixon absolutely would have been kicked out of office, which is why he resigned. Bill Clinton went through impeachment, but was, again, not kicked out of office. And Donald Trump actually went through it twice, but again, not kicked out of office. So I know you're pretty good with American history, but you may not know this. This was actually from when Thor of Asgard actually ran Congress. That was his gavel. Okay, so looking at a few different presidential items here, I got kind of a chuckle. So you see some of them are courtesy, like that one came from the Johnson Library. This basketball came from Obama. This is Bill Clinton's saxophone. It is lent by President Bill Clinton. He wants that saxophone back. The Clintons want stuff back, man. That's Chelsea's shoes. I guess those are coming back at some point. So now we have a section on life after the presidency, which I actually find to be very fascinating. People never really talk about this, and we might go over to a special place later that's about that. But this what this section is, and what a lot of former presidents do. Actually, I'm not trying to harp on the guy for any specific reason. It happens to be true. One of the guys who mostly defined the former presidency was actually Jimmy Carter. there's a long story behind that, but he's probably the best former president we ever had. And all the presidential rules, like, you should look into, there's a thing called the Former Presidents Act. It's truly fascinating what it's like to be a former president, because they lose all this power, and then they actually become more limited than most American citizens. For example, a former president is not allowed to drive a car. It's illegal. They can't do it. They're also not allowed to hold jobs for the most part, which is why they have to like just write books and make speeches. It's a very weird life, and that's why most of them end up becoming like best friends later, because they're the only people that can relate to each other. Speaking of Jimmy Carter, Habitat for Humanity, you can thank him for that. He just goes around and builds people's houses, and well, he did. So we are now in an American pop culture section, so they have artifacts from, say, Star Wars and the Muppets, and just, we even go back to Barnum and Bailey and the original circus and everything. Things like Jimi Hendrix's guitar. I think that's Jimi Hendrix. I don't know music. Or that's Prince. I don't know music. I don't know music. I admit it freely. That's a guy's guitar. That much I was sure of. To all of America and the world, you are welcome from Chicago. Number 23, Michael Jeffrey Jordan. Okay, that's cool. George Reeves' Superman original costume. That's neat. And then, of course, we have more Star Wars. So anybody who ever watched the Simpsons episode of Lisa Goes to Washington will know this joke very well, that Archie Bunker's chair is really here and is behind glass. And in the Simpsons episode, like, it's privately guarded by everybody, and then next to it is the Bill of Rights, like, open for anybody to just take. I didn't realize this was actually here. That's kind of hilarious. So you've got a Mr. Rogers bit going here. They have his actual sweater there, a bunch of other PBS stuff. I'm not going to tell the whole story, but Mr. Rogers, the guy who testified before Congress who saved PBS from going under. I gotta admit, it's kind of funny, if you ever watch that show, they actually put Captain America's shield in here. Dorothy's slippers from The Wizard of Oz. That's neat. So we're at the Ralph Baer exhibit. He's basically considered the father of video games. That's why they have an Odyssey over there. But they also have a replica of the original brown box prototype. This is like basically the first operational video game system of any kind. This, however, is just a replica, though the Smithsonian claims they have the actual original one, but they don't keep it out here for whatever reason. He did autograph this one, though.
So I'm here at the White House, and interesting little fun fact, so you can see it's very barricaded now. This used to not be the case when they first built it. The public could just freely go there, go inside, do all sorts of stuff. That obviously started changing over time, and now private tours, as far as I know, are post 9/11. You can't do it. I actually did do the private tour back in the 90s. So back then, you had to do special things, and my mom took us when we were kids, and we just thought, oh, you can just go in there. That's fascinating. She told us years later, like a year or two before she died, like how she did that. Turns out every member of Congress and senators, they all get a couple of passes per year to just give away to people to actually visit the White House. And essentially, she said that what you do is you find a congressman from some rural county in like a rural state. So I think she said it was like a rural county in Montana. You call their campaign headquarters, say that that's what you want to do, and you'd love to make a contribution to their campaign. Suddenly we have 3 White House passes. So I got to do that as a kid. It was pretty cool. On this side of the street, much better view.
So we've circled around. There's the White House again. This is, I think, the North Lawn. I think where we were before is the South Lawn. I think. Anyway, point is the White House is right there. I'm going to show you something else, though, that doesn't have nearly as much security, and I think is just as fascinating, is this little unassuming building, 716 Jackson. This is called the Presidential Townhouse. This is actually a special little hotel exclusively usable to former presidents. It's funded by the Former Presidents Act. So the basic history of this is that in Richard Nixon's second term, he saw the writing on the wall, he saw the things he was going to go out, so he decided he wanted a place to stay in Washington, something politically official, where he could be involved, and something very, very close by. And so he started this project to get this as something that he could use. It was not completed until Ford was president, very late into Ford's presidency, so much so that it was still impossible for Nixon to actually use it. So the first time he tried to, Jimmy Carter was president. And the only reason that matters is the incumbent president, whoever occupies that office over there, has to sign off on whichever former president is in here. Jimmy Carter refused to let Nixon use it.
And I think if I remember correctly, this has almost never been used by any former president. I think the first one that ever did was George H.W. Bush, and it wasn't until George W. Bush was in the White House that it had its first occupancy. It's very rarely used, and I think George H.W. Bush used it more than anybody else. Of the other living presidents, Clinton and Obama live in D.C. They would have no reason to use this. Carter never comes back here. Granted, he's also on his way out. Depending on when you've seen this, he might already be deceased. I'm not sure. And Bush Jr. never comes here either. Trump likely not coming. Well, he might come back here for different reasons, but the point is he's probably never going to attempt to stay in this. He also, I think, has hotels around here, you know, whatever. But I think that the most fascinating thing about it, from what I understand, there's like a courtyard and stuff behind it. It's not publicly accessible, obviously. But where it got its first use was actually in the Reagan years. If I remember the story correctly, in Reagan's first term, there was some international crisis thing, and he recognized that Jimmy Carter was the guy to go diplomatically solve that, but he couldn't, as the first term new president who defeated Jimmy Carter, say, my bad, Jimmy Carter should have done this, because that's a very bad look. So he wanted Jimmy Carter to go, but it was politically impossible to do so. So he's like, let me throw in another former president. So he threw in Ford, thinking, okay, we'll send two. That way you have one left, you know, one on the right, whatever, everybody's kind of happy, right? But the problem was Jimmy Carter and Gerald Ford absolutely hated each other. So they refused to do that together. And then eventually he came up with this idea, I'll bring Richard Nixon in, and all three of them will go. We'll send it as, because at that point that was the only three living former presidents. You send them in on this diplomatic mission together, and it was the only time really in his post-presidency that Nixon was actually officially involved with anything. And apparently he loved being involved with it, and he got peace between Ford and Carter. They ended up being, I don't know if you'd call them friends, but at least, you know, they became more cordial, so that all those former presidents things, all of the modern expectations of a former president largely come out of this building. So you hear sirens, you see cops, there's a big protest down there. As we're leaving, can't hear people yelling. Some stuff's going down, and all of a sudden all the cops are like running out here, get out of here, everybody's, we see them. Our timing was incredible. What can I say? I'm glad that 1 second more and we're not able to do any of our nerd stuff. The Lincoln Memorial with the giant statue of Lincoln, which maybe we'll go take a look at. I am out of shape, so that's a lot to ask. I'm kidding. I mean, I'm not kidding about being out of shape, but I am kidding that we wouldn't come up here. We did. There he is, the man himself, President number 16, probably the GOAT. The real GOAT, freed the slaves, all that. You guys know your history. There he is, Abraham Lincoln. My favorite, of course, is the time Megatron came here and kicked Lincoln out and sat on the throne on his own. So, just beyond the memorial, you have the Gettysburg Address laid out 7 years ago, you know, that whole thing. And then it continues down there inside these almost Greek, ethereal kind of pillars and everything. It's a very nice monument. There's a reason people come here instead of going to Jefferson.
It's a lot easier to get to here.
Yeah, to be fair, I know it's a Simpsons joke that nobody goes there, but you actually work the ground game logistics. It is actually a lot harder to get there. There's a reason everybody comes to this one. Okay, so there's the Jefferson Memorial way down there in case we don't end up going to it. Technically, I showed it to you. There you go. Hope you enjoyed it. Also, there's some cars and stuff over there. Have fun with that. So you see right there how the color tone changes from that type of white brick to that more beige-ish type. That's actually where the split happened when in Superman 2, when Zod came over and knocked it over. So when we repaired it, yeah, they just couldn't find the same quality paint, so that's why it looks like that. You guys remember earlier I told you about Spider-Man causing problems here a few years back? We actually now have Captain America here to defend it in case Spider-Man comes back. What a menace. One thing I've never done with this monument, made contact with it. If it fell over right now, that'd be really awkward. So, I'm not completely sure, but this might be part of America. I wish I had a clue somewhere. I don't know, man. So of course you have Capitol Hill here, Congress building, of course, to the legislative branch, one side being the House, the other side being the Senate. You guys know your history well enough, but here it is. Currently under construction, unfortunately, just doing maintenance and all that. But fun fact, if I recall correctly, so maybe it isn't a fact, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that this was actually completed during the Lincoln administration, which is probably why it needs so much maintenance, because that is an old building. So right here is actually the Canadian Embassy. You can see they've got like a sign over there about Canada, and they have the Canadian flag there. Now, fun fact, and you have a sign there, embassies are actually sovereign soil of the other country. So I'm in Canada now.
I mean, how's your freedom feel?
It's being extracted, so this hurts. Come over here. You've never been to Canada. You're about to go to Canada. Boom, you're in Canada. You've never been to Canada before. Now you're half free, half not. You can tell it's a border because this sign is completely as close as possible, but still on the American side. Look at that. You can't put it on the Canadian side. But this Starbucks cup represents invasion and freedom or something. Look at that. Look at that. Starbucks is everywhere. So right here we have Ford's Theater. This is the theater famous for the assassination of Abraham Lincoln by John Wilkes Booth. After he was shot, they brought him out here across the street, hence his picture is up there, and ultimately he died in that building. And then Andrew Johnson became president of the United States. So it's an interesting little hallowed ground of sorts. Also kind of fascinating little tidbit. Abraham Lincoln was assassinated at Ford's Theater, and John F. Kennedy was assassinated in a Ford Lincoln. He gets full credit for this. This is the ancient Waffle House where Lincoln got into a fight right before he went into Ford's Theater and ultimately was killed. The guy, John Wilkes Booth and him got into a tussle. Yeah, that's what happened over at Waffle House. So we're not going here right now, but if you've ever been to downtown DC and you're looking for food, Farmer and Distillers, I showed you guys this place in a different DC video. Pretty good place, nice Americana style food, which makes sense, you're in DC. But anyway, I would suggest this if you're ever out here. Day 4. So our adventure in DC is over. So we're gonna go over to Reagan DCA and head out of here. Maybe United Club Lounge. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, it was a big fun time. I hope you had a good time. Yeah. All right, now back at DCA. So we got to go over here to the South Security Checkpoint. That's where United rolls. They do have a clear lane here, so we're gonna make good use of that. So the DCA United Club. I've never actually been to this one before. Looks like it's kind of hidden in the back, and that you need. Oh, there is an elevator. I was hoping you didn't have to use the stairs. That's good. So inside, it is not a big United Club, but it's nice. The tables are good. We'll go check out the buffet. There's obviously water and things like that. And yeah, here we go. We got our coffee machines, some snacks, cutlets, stuff. I'm not really particularly hungry right now, so I just kind of made a mixed bag, if you will, of like nuts and raisins and cranberries and all sorts of stuff, and I'll just kind of eat it as a healthy potpourri, as it were.
If you have a bag in the aisle, please bring it to the front of the plane.
We're back in Chicago. DC is a lot of fun. I want to go back. I want to have a bigger trip, show you more sites, because that's the problem with DC. There's so much stuff to do there. You can't possibly do it all in a single video. Anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe. As always, check out the social media stuff in the description. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, Patreon, etc. Thank you so much for the support. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you all later.